just so you know. And also some things about using WebEx. If you lose your internet connection, don't panic. Just reconnect using the link I made you. And if you need help or have any questions, just use the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. You can send a message to myself or to Rebecca, who also works for Wings. And you can adjust your audio settings on the audio pane at the top menu. I'll mute everyone automatically, and at the end of the webinar, when we open up for questions, you can unmute yourselves, or you can send your questions through the chat box to everyone or to myself. And I'll just talk a little bit about Wings. We are a worldwide membership organization, and here we have two good examples of organizations that are part of Wings, as we serve membership associations such as the Social Return on Investment Network and support organizations such as Filantrofilia. We have a global mandate. We currently have over 150 members in 54 countries around the world in all regions. Missions to strengthen philanthropy through knowledge sharing and professional development of our members. And webinars are part of our program to do that. So, featuring today, we have Jeremy Nichols. He's Chief Executive of Social Return on Investment Network, and Edgar Herrera, and he's Executive Director of Filantrofilia. If you have any questions, and you can type them in here, just send us an email on info@wingsweb.org. And I'll pass the presentation to Jeremy. Jeremy?
Hello, Anna.
Oh, hi. We can hear you now.
You can hear me? Yeah?
Yeah.
Thank you. Good afternoon or good morning, everybody. As Anna said, I'm the Chief Executive of the Social Return on Investment Network. And I'm going to give you a very short overview of what we do and what social return on investment is, and then hand over to a more detailed example of how that's being used in practice. So the SROI network was formed 5 years ago. Social return on investment itself has been around, I suppose, for about 10 years. It was invented in the States. Jed Emerson is the lead on all this, I guess. And since then, it has grown in interest around the world. We decided the network was the best way of taking this forward because we wanted to have something that was owned by members and in which members can get involved in the development. There's no intellectual property in this. Anyone can pick it up and have a go, although obviously we encourage people to become part of this community. So we now have, I think it's nearly 800 members at the moment in over 30 countries. And we spend a lot of time trying to encourage and support the development of national networks. And you can see the ones we have there. We have another few coming along. I think Spain will probably be the next one to form, and then Portugal's also thinking about it. So growing, and I think reflecting a recognition around the world that there is some sense of value that we're not capturing. That's both value that's being created and value that's being destroyed, and that we need to get a better sense of that if we are going to make better investment decisions and move resources to those things which on balance create more social value and destroy less. So we are the home for social return on investment as a methodology and the guidance for that, and then we'll get involved in developing that. And we generally provide training and assurance, information and support, infuse, we hope, and excite people to get involved and become part of this journey. We have a guide, of course, and increasingly we have some supplements to that as our methodology subcommittee members decide that they think, or the members decide they want new guidance in some areas. And guidance has now been translated into a number of languages, including Spanish, French, Chinese, Korean, and English, as you can see, and a bunch coming up this year. And again, we depend very much on members to run with this. They say, stick their hands up and say, I'll do that translation, and then they come on. But this allows us to have, I think it stood the test of time for the 3 years that we've had this guide. That is, we hear and easy to use, clear framework, a document that helps people if they're starting out to think about the social value of their work. We also have a database called Wiki Voice. Voice stands for Values, Outcomes, Indicators for Stakeholders. Voice is the pun, I suppose, for people whose values are often excluded from our thinking, our decisions, and influence what we do. And this is completely open. Anybody anywhere in the world, I would hope that all of you can want to go and have a look, but please add stuff to it. It's used a lot as a resource for people to see what other people have done, how they've thought about an outcome, or how they've measured it, or how they've thought about a value for that, to help them guide difficult choices. But it is something that's open, and we would encourage you to either send us stuff if you want to do that on a spreadsheet or in some format, or get in there, comment on what's there, add to it so that we can create more of a repository for all the different kinds of ways around the world people thinking about this, and create a bottom-up conversation so that we kind of get to some standardization over time, but as a result of what people are using and what's useful to them, and use that to balance what sometimes can seem to be a more top-down approach to determining measures and things like that. Now, our wildly ambitious mission is to change the way society accounts for value, because that intrinsically is the problem, that the way we currently account for value, and the main ways, I guess, is financial value and financial accounting, we increasingly recognize misses out pieces of parts and elements of things that are of value, and we don't take them into account in our decisions, and consequently we don't invest in the right things in the right ways. What lies behind this is this sense of inequality. It may be wildly ambitious, but the guide starts off by saying that social return on investment is there to reduce inequality and reduce environmental degradation. And whilst that might be a tall order, we do believe that part of the solution to the challenges that we face and are inside countries only increasing, it seems at the moment, part of that solution has to be to change the fundamentals, the basics of what we think of as value and how we can share some way of communicating that to influence what we do. Consequently, we spend quite a lot of time thinking about how what we do fits with other things that you'll probably have heard about. I think that the onus is on those of us who are involved in one form of measurement or another to make this easier for people. And the ones that we spent most time on are the ones that are completed now, so that's GEARS, and IRIS, and social accounting and social audit. And all of these have slightly different relationships, but they have a fit, and we have worked with those organizations to get explanations on their website and on ours. If you want to know more, just go to our website, look at the publications, and there's these kind of framing documents or linkage documents with other approaches. Actually, what I believe is that underneath what sometimes is talked about as differences, a lot of similarity. What we are working towards then, effectively, is a global social and environmental accounting standard. There is convergence, and I think we need to. We would certainly recognise, and I think sometimes the language gets confused between saying that there are many impacts, and they may need different ways of measuring them, which is very true. This is not the same as saying there are many ways of measuring impact, of deciding which impact you should be accountable for, where increasingly I think there is more and more consistency, whether that's through economists or sustainability accounting or through valuation or through what we do in social return. I think there is a slow but certain coming together. Now, we base what we do on a set of principles. This is a framework, principle-based framework, where we are trying to work out the answer to the question, not only are we making a difference, not only are we creating any value, but actually, are we creating as much value as we can with the resources that we have at our disposal? And to answer those questions, we have some principles which are here. They are to involve people. We have to start with the views and experiences of people who are affected by our activities. We have to understand what changes for them and recognize that that is positive and negative, and that therefore means we may have many different outcomes, and we need a way of focusing on what is material, and we need to recognize that if we're creating value for more people, we should, I think, actually recognize what that value actually is from their point of view. And we should recognize the vexed question of that something would happen anyway, that we may displace other activity, and that others may be involved in what we do. And they are the principles. They require some judgments, and consequently we need to be transparent. And we believe strongly that the test of what is good enough comes from some level of peer review or external assurance as appropriate for the situation. But as humans, we're optimists. We tend to more easily focus on the good news, and we need to have a little bit of pushback, a little bit of humility to recognize that in pursuing good, sometimes bad also happens and potentially is inevitable to some extent, and we create better services if we understand that and manage it. So social return is very flexible. It says we have no clue what outcomes or indicators you might need, but we have a framework which will help you think through which you should be managing if you're going to create more value. And we've seen this change from people thinking about internal management decisions to investor decisions, from public sector commissioning services. But again, I think a lot of the value comes from businesses at a governance level saying, well, how could we change things to create more value? This can be used by startups. It's been involved in global social venture competition and other business planning competitions. So you can use those principles on the back of an envelope virtually to start thinking about the value, all the way up to system-wide change where several organizations have been involved in thinking about the value that they create together structurally to create systemic change. And is usable by any sector. It's not specific. It really is thinking about non-financial value, the value that we aren't capturing. That's relevant to everybody, and increasingly is used by everybody. And I think what we're then asking ourselves is, well, look, let's just imagine a world where we have a more consistent way of accounting for this missing value, the good and the bad. We don't know what those values look like. They can be unique, but we have a framework which we share the way in which we have determined them. And we can communicate on that basis. And we're accountable for what we're doing in that wider sense. And that as a result of that, we can move resources, or we can move investments, more of them, to the areas which we recognize there is great need, and away from those areas which on balance may well be creating, if not more damage, then as much damage, or at least some damage, as much as they create. And in that, just possibly, that we can imagine a world where inequality starts to reduce. And so in that balance between that kind of vision and hope and something which is practical and usable tomorrow for anybody to get this principle to start thinking about those in those organizations, we have a membership body. And if you're vaguely interested in that, go to our website, and I would encourage you to join and become part of that community. And that's where our information is. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Jeremy, for your presentation. It's been very informative. And if you have any questions, you can write them down in the chat box or wait for our or wait until we open up for questions. So I'd like to pass word to Edgar Herrera from Filantrofilia. Edgar?
Excellent. Hope you can all hear me now.
Yes, we can definitely hear you. And
Excellent.
You become the presenter.
Thank you, Anna. Oh yeah, it says here now you're the presenter. So I'm on. Well, I wanted to say good morning, everyone. Until Mexico, it's 8 a.m. But from wherever you're listening in, thanks for joining. We are Filantrofilia. We are based in Mexico City, and we started operations in 2010. We were born in 2009, so as you can see, we are very, very young. What we really wanted to give to society here in Mexico is a way to, as Jeremy said, it's a way to actually account for value in a different way. We actually wanted to put numbers on the social value that NGOs and social programs have in Mexico. And I have to say, as probably many of your countries, the culture of measuring value in monetary terms was not really easily welcomed here. But I have to say, we have been quite successful in this for years now. the challenge was to actually really have a methodology that was practical and was pragmatic and easy to implement and not expensive. So we started in 2010, and I wanted to talk to you today not about really all the things that we do, but I wanted to concentrate or to focus on our methodology, on how we actually think about these things. And at the end of the presentation, I wanted to show you some results of the NGOs themselves, how they've been actually being rated by us. So let me go to the next slide. Let's see how I do that. Hold on. Hold on. Okay. Excellent. So on the second slide. So Philanthropia's rating methodology, we really try to base it on international best practices. And at the end of the day, when we go and evaluate an NGO, we really look at two big parts. One is the institutional strength, which is the left side of the drawing that you see here. And the right side is the social impact. Well, we spend about 6 weeks rating or evaluating an NGO here. And we really want to understand what the institutional strength is, how the administration is, how the board of directors works, all that kind of stuff. And that's what we rate on the left side. But today we really want to concentrate on the social impact. And for social impact, we really look at 4 basic indicators, right? The indicators on the left side, we of course look at SROI. We also look at the reach and the effectiveness and the efficiency of the program of the NGO. And starting this year, we started really looking at at 3 additional indicators: the cost of income generation, the income gap, and the real cost per beneficiary. So talking about social return on investment, well, we did a lot of research. We think we understood what the social return, well, the different ways of looking at that. The challenge, as I was saying, was really to find a way to make it very practical to NGOs in Mexico. We have about 25 to 30,000 NGOs in Mexico, and most of them are medium or very small. And we have probably 700 or less big foundations that actually give money, grants, to all of these NGOs. So the problem in Mexico is not really about resources, but it's about having too few or not too many foundations that actually provide grants. And the problem was that these foundations don't, well, when we went and talked to a lot of them, most of them did not have a real way of actually making a smart decision about how to give money. They were giving their money, as we like to call it, the old-fashioned way. So we really wanted to help to provide a way for them to actually start thinking about giving money in a different way. So what we did, we asked ourselves one basic question for every NGO that we rate. And the question is, if the NGO were to disappear tomorrow, what will happen? And basically that question really gives us the parameter to actually think about, well, what is the value that this NGO is actually giving to society? And if it were to disappear, well, what will happen? I mean, what would be the consequences, the immediate consequences? And at the end of the day, we decided that we were looking at 2 answers, or the 2 answers are the most immediate choices if an NGO were to disappear. The first one is that, well, of course, some or maybe all of the beneficiaries will stop receiving the benefit. But on the other hand, if the NGO were to disappear, probably somebody else will have to pay for the benefit in order for the beneficiaries to keep receiving the benefit, right? So what we really wanted to do is to put out a value on the benefit that will be stopped received by society, right? So how do you do that? Well, that's where we look at social return on investment. So we sat down and we thought about this for a few months, and our philosophy is that, well, for us, for our methodology here in Mexico, social return on investment is the monetary value of the non-substitutable benefit the social organization generates for the good of society. So when we go to the foundations that give grants, we always ask them, well, do you know what would be the consequence if you were to stop giving money to this NGO? And if you were to stop giving that, how relevant is your grant, and how relevant is that for society, right? So that's the main question that we try to help them answer. So our formula for social return on investment in Mexico is quite simple. Well, first, we look at the social benefit. Then we multiply that by the effectiveness. And we divide all of that by the investment of the NGO or the programs, right? Now, how do you really account for social benefit? Because that's the hard part. How do you put a number on that? What does that really mean? So what we do in Mexico is that we actually involve the beneficiaries here. We actually go and survey them. We ask them, hey, this NGO is saying that they provide you with this benefit, but what is your experience? And if you were not to receive this benefit from the NGO, what other options do you have locally here? What are your options, your immediate options? We really try to look at the very short period of time, right? So we go and ask them, and then we look at indicators such as the value of food, the value of transportation, the value of all these things that really are accounted for the benefit. So as Jeremy was saying, we always look at things that we can touch, and with things that we can see. We cannot put a value on things that are not tangible, right? Then we look at the effectiveness. And I have to say, when we really started doing this in 2010, for us, effectiveness was, we really wanted to understand not how many kids went to school, but we really wanted to understand how many kids learned to learn. We wanted to learn the effectiveness of the program. But we learned that that was really difficult and time-consuming to understand. And because a lot of NGOs don't have the information there, well, sometimes it was impossible, and we actually we had to do an impact evaluation with on control groups. But that was going to be so hard, so expensive, that we decided we were not going to do that. So the actual term of effectiveness, the meaning of effectiveness changed for us, although the terminology stayed there. Now we look at effectiveness as, if I may say, the market penetration of the social benefit. We want to understand out of every 100 beneficiaries, how many of these don't have any other options. So for us, effectiveness is the percentage of people receiving the service that have no other option to receive the same or similar social benefit in the very short time. So we call it the percentage of non-substitutability. And we understand that that's not really what it effectiveness means, but as I said, we started, I think, thinking about it in a different way, and in practice, we saw that it was not easy to implement. So after we put a number of on social benefits and we multiply that by effectiveness, we divide that into the total monetary investment that the program or the NGO has. And that's what gives us the ratio of social return on investment. Now, here in Mexico, we started doing social return on investment with projections over 5 years, because we really wanted to tell the donors what value to society was this gift going to have in 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 years. And what we discover is that it is really, really hard to actually have a solid base to project social return on investment over 5 years with this methodology. So what we started doing last year is that we're only doing social return on investment on 1 year, and we usually measure the fiscal year that just passed, right? So if you really think about it, for us, social return on investment is the opportunity cost for society. Now I wanted to well, and as I mentioned, we started operations in May 2010. We have rated a little more than 200 NGOs here in Mexico. Most of them are not the really small ones. Most of them are the medium ones. We have definitely increased an awareness for social return on investment in Mexico here. A lot of the big foundations are actually now using it, and some of them are actually requiring the NGOs to actually have it in order for them to actually get a grant. And we are increasing the use of data by donors and NGOs here. Now, I wanted to share with you some of the results that we had, and this is really a summary. And I'm going to talk about different sectors, right? But as you can see in this graph, on the left side, we have the level of effectiveness. As I was saying, the number of the percentage of beneficiaries that don't have any option, any other option to get a similar benefit. And on the bottom, well, on the X line, we have the social return on investment of 1 year. So this graph, this first graph shows the SROI results compared to effectiveness of welfare organizations in Philanthropia. And as you can see, a lot of the SROI are less than 5 pesos for every peso invested, right? And as you can see, a lot of the effectiveness are really chunk into 70 and 90%. So what this really means is that a lot of the NGOs that we have worked with really are giving the benefit to the actual people that really need it. And a few of them, 3 of them here, actually have 100% of effectiveness, meaning that, as I said, every single beneficiary of that NGO will have no other option if it were to disappear. Now, let me show you another graph. This is for NGOs in education, culture, and environment. Right? We put them together because we think we can compare them. As you can see, the effectiveness of the level of non-substitutability here is not as crowded on well, it is. I'm sorry. It's on the 80 to 100% still, which really means that, as I said, a lot of these NGOs are really giving the benefits of their programs to the right people. But as you can see, the SROI is more spread. Now, some of these, as you can see, have over 22.5 pesos for every peso invested. And a lot of these programs are the ones that actually work with in advance to actually prevent illnesses and that kind of stuff. So we're really trying to understand more how this how these NGOs that have over 22.5 pesos of SROI really work, so we can actually create more NGOs like that here in Mexico. Now, if we look at the next one, this is for development and citizenship participation here in Mexico. We have seen that a lot of these NGOs that work with citizenship participation are actually increasing their numbers in the last few years. And as I said, a lot of these NGOs, the ones that have over 32.5 pesos, really work with programs that prevent violence here in Mexico, right? So we actually go and ask the beneficiaries, well, if this NGO had not done this work, do you think the violence in your house or in your community could have been the same? And if they and if we can find proof that that was the case, then there's where we can claim that the SROI is higher, right? Let me show you the last graph here, and this is about health organizations. As you can see, the level of effectiveness is a little lower here. For some cases, we have 60-something%. And I would say that most of the NGOs in Mexico, a lot of them, work with health issues here. And the problem here is, of course, taking the programs to the really remote places here. But as you can see, there's one that has over 40 pesos SROI. And that's one that actually works with, as I mentioned before, preventing or avoiding future problems. And that's what we are really trying to look in Mexico, to actually try to prevent. Now, the last graph, well, the very last graph now is just an overall of few organizations here in Mexico. But overall, the NGOs here look this way. The effectiveness really starts most of the time at 60%. We have rarely seen an NGO rated as to have less than 64%, but as I said, we have only rated over 200 out of more than 25,000. So it's very small, but we think this is good and bad news, because a lot of NGOs in Mexico, I said, work the right beneficiaries. But that means that we really have a lot of problems here to still solve. Right? Now, we've been talking to some friends in Poland, in England, in Brazil. Of course, we're open to share our methodology to whoever thinks will be helpful to. As I said, we really tried at the very beginning to have a methodology that is practical, that is not expensive, that is flexible. And as Jeremy was saying, flexible does not mean that it can be changed, but we really try to make it very consistent. We just try to adjust it to every single case. So that's my presentation. I hope it was helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us. We have a website, Philantrofilia.org. And I hope it was good. Yeah. Thanks, Anna.
Thank you very much, Edgar. That was very good, very useful. So, and Jeremy, would you like to make some final remarks?
Oh, just quickly. Am I back
sure.
on?
Yeah.
Thank you. Again, that was great. I think one of the great things about what I get to do is be able to kind of see a lot of people using social return in ways that help them and are increasingly being made accessible to other people. And actually, it wasn't until Wings and Anna invited us to do this that I knew your work, and I've been looking at that since then, thinking, well, this is an example of just the kind of thing that we're saying. It's possible to do this. It can be done in a flexible way. It doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, it's going to take some resources, of course, but as any thinking process will. But it's doable, and it provides a level of information which, in the end, is useful to you in Philanthropia. That is one of the things we struggle to get over, I think, is a lot of the time people are trying to get to some sense of accuracy when they're measuring these things, some sense of perfection, which really isn't there. We don't have that level in our financial accounting. We make that good enough, and we need to get to that same point as to what is good enough when we're talking about the other value that is being created by organisations. So it's really, really fantastic to see that you've got something that is usable. It helps you make decisions, and I think it shows what the rest of us can all do. Thank you.
And thank you, Jeremy. So we're now opening for questions. So if any of you have any questions, you can unmute yourselves, or you can type your question on the chat box. And anyone, any questions to Jeremy or Edgar? So in any case, and Jeremy, I actually have one question for you. That you mentioned kind of convergence of approaches, and how I was wondering how you can do that, because Wings is sorry, just muted you for a second because there's a bit of background noise. And because Wings is working on developing a framework for collecting data on philanthropy, so we're very into how that can be done. So if you could expand a little bit more on what you mentioned about a more consistent way of doing social return investment and developing a framework for it, would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. I think it doesn't actually matter whether it's social return on investment or sustainability accounting, for example, the Global Reporting Initiative, or IRIS as an indicator database. I think all these things they fit, and we can understand how they fit together. What our principles do is help people to decide which changes, let's call them things that change for people, should we be accountable for, but should we be managing if we want to create more value. I think the decision as to how you measure them, once you've worked out what they are, will be potentially quite unique. Although over time, the more we see the same experiences, the same changes being experienced by the same groups of people, and I think it's important that it's the same groups of people with the same changes, we can start to build a more commoner way of measuring them. But that comes from practice, and that's why I think I'm interested to know about what your approach to data is going to be, because we think that the solution to this really comes from sharing and practicing. I don't think we share as much as we could and should if we're going to be able to see what other people have done in order to be able to go, yeah, that was great, I'm going to do mine a bit differently next time, or no, I didn't agree with that, we're going to stick with what we're doing and try and make the case. But those conversations slowly build some standardization. And I think we have to differentiate between standardization of outcomes, of standardizing ways of measuring them, of standardizing the values that they may have for different people in different situations. And so all these little bits of the jigsaw will have their own journeys. And the key for me in that is principles and sharing information. And that's why we have Wikivoice.
That's great to hear, because that's what we've been working hard on, because we don't want to reinvent the wheel, and we want to know what everyone is doing. So it's great to hear that. There is a question for you from Bernardino from Italy. If you could expand on how you're planning to work with collective impact.
Yeah, so it's interesting. One of the things that social return on investment says we should do is think about change from the point of view of our stakeholders. And interesting that Edgar was saying the same thing. Now, more often than not, but it's very, very common that if you think like that, the changes that you are then thinking about managing are not the ones that your organization creates by itself. They are changes that have to be created by you with other people or other organizations. So the very process of thinking about change from the point of view of your stakeholder tends to make you reflect on the system within which you operate. Now, of course, for many organizations, particularly early or when they have limited resources, it's not easy then to jump to going and encouraging all those other organizations to get together and start working on collective impact. But it's the start of that. It's the start of that process. And, you've got to start more than often than you starting with the organization. So social return investment should help you think about who should you be working with by making you realize that the change that the really important change that you contribute to is also other people and organizations are involved in that. And I think one of the challenges for collective impact is who is the collective? There's a danger in that you can jump to a kind of list of people that you think are the ones that are necessary. And there are lots of risks in that. So again, starting that conversation with thinking about the perceptions and the views of your stakeholder gives you at least it reduces the risk. It gives you some better chance of thinking about who is the collective. And from that, you can then build a program which starts to think about shared metrics, the kind of resourcing of that partnership, the kind of shared vision and all those other bits that you need. But the building blocks got to be a decision about who is going to be in that collective program.
That's great. Thank you, Jeremy. I think Joseph has a question.
Yes.
Can
you hear me?
Oh, yes,
Hi.
We can hear you
Hi.
now.
I'm Joseph Michael. I'm from the Resource Alliance in London. We are an international NGO working with NGOs and charities to strengthen their skills in fundraising and resource mobilization. We also work with foundations, to strengthen the capacity of their grantees to raise more resources or funds, once a project is over or as part of the exit strategies, and we work across the globe. Actually, both the presentations have been very, very useful. One question to Jeremy and maybe a brief comment or question to Edgar. In terms of, from a fundraising perspective, when we focus of the social return of investment, would there be would there be a scope to include organizational sustainability itself? I know mostly some focus of the issue would be the wider social return, but from an investment perspective, for a donor, for example, would be asking, hey, beyond this project, how as an organization would be sustaining itself. So would this be featured into the social return of investment from a fundraising perspective? Of course, I understand the wider social impact. And then to Edgar, the model is very useful. Just wondering, is it applicable to different program components, or is it only applicable to a specific type of interventions?
To kick off then on the sustainability of the organization, I think there are two ways of dealing with this. One is to think of if it's the financial sustainability of the organization, is to keep that in a sense separate. So here's the financial model, the business plan for the organization, and sitting alongside that is the non-financial value that's being created. And here is an investment that you're giving us, and here's our analysis of how that sustains the financial business in order that we can create this social impact that we are analyzing as part of the social return. So one option is you keep them separate, but you would present them together. The other option is to say that an organization really is nothing more than the sum of its stakeholders. So under one scenario, you have a social impact created without the investment of X, and then in the other scenario, you have a social return created with the investment of Y, where the duration, if you want, of that value is created for more years maybe, or it's deeper, or whatever kind of nuances you feel that investment is giving you. So in one you see a financial model and a social return, in the other you see two social returns, one of which shows you the enhanced social return being created by that investment over a longer period.
Thank you, Jeremy. And we have a couple of questions to Edgar here from Luis Fernandez. And Edgar, could you talk about the use of an IRIS, IRIS, and social return on investment in Mexico? Are there many organizations working on this too? And what are the main challenges related to data in Mexico? Is there any kind of Mexican survey that pictures impact measurement in the country?
We
Edgar, sorry, and we missed the beginning.
Oh, hi. Well, here I'm back. In terms of IRIS, we have seen some NGOs and some foundations actually using it. I would say it's very limited yet, but they are starting to actually use it. Now, in terms of collected data or the quality of data, if that's the question, I would say that's a real challenge here. As Jeremy was saying, the problem is that, at least here in Mexico, one of the main challenges we had at the very beginning is that we did not find any public data or any consistent data from the government. If I used to work in the USA, and there we had a lot of public information that is readily available to everyone. Well, here in Mexico, that's not the case. So you were asking about a national survey. Well, we are actually trying to do that in Philanthropia. We just launched a national survey 2 months ago. But what we found is that we really have to concentrate on very specific topics in each survey, because if we really try to understand or to ask all questions to everyone, it's just so difficult. So, and the other thing, as Jeremy was saying, the collector of the data is key, right? And what we really try to do is that we try to involve the beneficiaries to actually help us get the data. But of course, it gets contaminated. It's hard to put it in a database with the software to actually really try to understand it. So I would say we still have probably 5 more years at least to actually have a decent database here in Mexico that can actually give us a more analytical perspective for all the NGOs and the social programs. At least 5 years. I hope that answered the questions.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Edgar. Could you just say to us, we're not that familiar, what IRIS is?
I think I'm not the one to really talk about IRIS. We have seen that in some with some NGOs that we go and they tell us, well, we work with IRIS here or there, but I don't really feel that I'm the expert to actually talk about that. I don't know if Jeremy knows more about that. But we've seen a lot of NGOs here in Mexico that really are looking into international certifications, international ways of doing things, and some of the corporations with the social programs of enterprises are, of course, looking at the international ways of reporting, right? That's the ones that Jeremy was talking about. But I'm sure you, Jeremy, could actually talk more about IRIS and.
Sure. Jeremy, thanks, Edgar.
Yes, certainly. IRIS is a database of a way of standardizing indicators of management performance, of inputs, of outputs, a lot of information about output. But they're working with all sorts of different organizations to get to that shared view then of what a good indicator, what a standardized indicator would look like. The relationship with social return is that social return investment says, what outcomes should we be managing? And once you've decided what outcomes you need to manage, you then need an indicator. So it's a good idea to take that outcome and see if you can find a good indicator for it on IRIS, because if the indicator on IRIS works for you, you know that it's got some standardization and some work that's done behind it, so it's more likely to be commented on, have some compatibility and understanding from other people.
Oh wow, thank you, Jeremy. And Luis Fernandez wrote on the chat box a small definition about it, so and that might be useful. And there's a question for you here also, and Jeremy, and from Tatsuaki Kobayashi. He's saying that he heard that at the latest G8 summit, the UK government strongly tried to promote social impact investment, especially social impact bonds. So how do you evaluate the impact of this move to social return investment? And do you think that it could be a key indicator to evaluate the impact of social impact bonds?
So, so the social impact bonds that I've seen are very consistent with the principles that we would advocate, with a couple of nuances, I guess. They tend to have focused on one outcome, which would be the policy outcome. So, for example, reducing reoffending. Although social return would generally say there's likely to be other outcomes as well, and it will help us to create more value if we understand them. So, but nonetheless, they are outcome focused. They have valued them. The valuation process in there is very much though from the perspective of the government or the taxpayer, effectively, in order that you can work out how much would the taxpayer be willing to pay to run and support the intervention which is creating that outcome, on the basis that the creation of that outcome saves money or frees up resources. And so again, we'd be thinking about, well, what are the values of the other outcomes from the point of view actually of the beneficiaries? But nonetheless, they're pretty consistent, and they are taking a serious approach to the outcomes, a serious approach to recognizing what would have happened anywhere, a very high test for the rigor in which the counterfactual is being tested is great, and they are thinking about value. So, whilst we would perhaps expand some of those applications and those principles, the core of them are consistent.
And thank you, Jeremy. When we have a question here for Edgar, kind of difficult question actually, and does the methodology used by Filantrofilia and provide you with enough information to meet the expectations of all stakeholders? Or if it's just for your own use, or is it being used by other organizations?
Well, we try to make public the results of all the evaluations that we actually have here. The problem here is that in order for us to make it public, we have to have the permission of the NGO that has been rated. And I would say less than half of the NGOs in Mexico actually agreed to make it public, which is of course not good, because we actually try to promote the value of this to be available to everyone. I think this is changing slowly. I think it has to do also with the perception that in Mexico there's a lot of violence and there's a lot of danger in giving openly your numbers to everyone. But as I said, that's changing. Now, in terms of the question if our methodology answers all questions to everyone, well, one of the challenges that we had at the very beginning, as I said, is that we wanted to have a methodology that is practical, that is pragmatic, that gives us probably not complete information, but gives us enough information to actually answer the basic questions of impact. Because at the end of the day, we want to know what direction the impact of an NGO is having. We don't really try to understand the whole impact. So if I may have an analogy, I would say that our methodology, think about it as a painting from Renoir or from Matisse, right? It's a painting where you can actually look at the big picture. You can actually see the flower, or you can see the lake and the little sailing boat there. But you cannot look at the very, very detail as in another painting, right? So I would say that our methodology gives enough information to actually make decisions on investing, but it does not give complete information whatsoever. but I would say that the information we give is useful to everyone, to society, to the NGO, to other NGOs that are working on same programs, and to the public here. So I hope that answers the question.
Oh, great. Thank you very much, Edgar. We have a final question here by Sophia Kittler. And Sophia, please jump in at any time. You can just unmute yourself. And it's asking that regarding the social return on investment calculation, it seems to have a bias against nonprofits in a competitive space. So how does the effectiveness rating normalize for that? If either Edgar or Jeremy. Hello? Hi, Sophia.
Hey, how are you?
Okay,
Hi.
So you can ask your question.
I'm sorry, I could not really understand the question. Could you repeat it, please, of if Jeremy can jump in?
Oh,
And Sophia?
I suppose my question was, it just looks like effectiveness, if you're looking at the number of people who would not be receiving it if you kind of took it away. If there's a bunch of other people doing a similar, offering a similar service, but not offering it well, then it kind of penalizes people who are really good in a specific space with a lot of different NGOs. Whereas if you have somebody who's maybe providing a service that not everybody provides, but isn't necessarily doing it well, those people have a leg up in the rating system. I'm not sure if that's, I assume it's not accurate. I was just wondering how that works.
Yes, thanks for the question. Yes, well, that question we ask ourselves every day for every NGO, right? For every program, for every community. And it is actually very hard to compare, but we have come to the conclusion that, let's see, I can think of an example here. We work rating a lot of soup kitchens in Mexico, right? So the best soup kitchens in Mexico not only feed kids, or they also evaluate, the level of blood sugar. They actually weight the children to see if they're overweight or not. They actually do that over periods of time here, every 6 months, every 9 months. Those are the best soup kitchens in Mexico. But when we ask ourselves, well, what if this soup kitchen were to disappear in this specific area in Mexico? What other options do children have to actually eat? So we basically come back to the basic necessity of the beneficiaries, and in this case, it's to eat. It's not to improve their level of nutrition here. And at the end of the day, we know that that's not an actual fair comparisons to other services around. But we really try to think about the worst case. That could happen here. Now, if we're talking about soup kitchens, it's actually kind of easy to actually do. The problem is when we talk about education programs, health programs. So all I can say is that we think about it in every single rating that we do, and we think about the worst case here. So not an easy way to actually do it.
Thank you very much, Edgar. And unfortunately, our webinar is coming to an end now. So if you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to email us here at Wings, or Jeremy or Edgar directly. And I'm sure we'll all be very happy to answer any questions you may have. So thank you so much, Edgar, and thank you so much, Jeremy, for presenting this great webinar for us and providing us all this information on social return on investment. I'm sure we all learned more than we did know about it today. So again, please do not hesitate to send us any questions you may have, and thank you so much for attending the webinar. Thank you.